and that friend of theirs is a Jew, which is like, so this Jew told Kanye what to do, and he listened while complaining about Jews controlling him, while his white supremacist campaign manager also was down with
following the black leader.
It's like none of this makes any sense.
It's like the Matrix is breaking. It's really bizarre. It's very strange. Yeah. Maybe that's the first thing we should talk about, because I do think there's this. Okay, well, let me back up for 1 second here. Let me give a little bit of preface. We've both been Kanye fans for a long time, of his music, of his albums. I mean, I have many of his records. I have a poster of him still.
I like Kanye. Rap college dropout front to back.
Yeah. And seriously, I love Kanye, and I still love Kanye. Just like he loves Jews, and he loves the person
Hitler. Let's just call him by his name.
Let's just call him by his name.
Hitler.
But on the whole crazy thing, and this has obviously been a topic about Kanye for years now, but you do see this coming out where people are starting to say like, oh, well, he's just crazy. I feel bad for him. I feel sorry for him, whatever. And it's like, okay, whether or not he has, bipolar or different things that you could classify as mental illness or not, it's like mental illness is not it's not like somebody has cancer and it's just like, oh, well, their brain stopped functioning. Like everything they say is just nonsense now.
Well, okay. I mean, here's the thing. You absolutely can be there are people who can be mentally ill in such a way that they are going to spew a bunch of craziness and do things that are completely reckless and put their life in danger or whatever. The thing with Kanye or Ye or whatever the fuck, is that I'm not really convinced that he wouldn't be saying these things if he was medicated. That's where it comes down to for me. I think, so this is how I see it. Kanye was raised by a mother who taught him that if he can do anything he puts his mind to and achieve anything and be anyone he wants to be. And then he did that all the way to being the biggest, most influential person in the fucking world. He did it all, no one is on his level. No one can relate to him. He proved his mom's words right. He can literally do anything. And I feel like it's from that perspective that he feels like he can say all this stuff. Not that he can't say it, but you know what I mean? I feel like that is what's empowering him in what he's been saying lately more than anything else in my eyes.
And also, calling someone crazy or anything crazy is really just a way of saying you don't understand. And so it's like, if you just call you could have called Kanye crazy in 2016. And it's like, okay, so think about how stupid that is. It's like, okay, if you called Kanye crazy in 2016 and now your response to him is like, well, he's just crazy. It's like, okay, I mean, a lot has changed since then. He's changed since then. He's accomplished a lot since then. I mean, you could just call him crazy, but I mean, clearly something is working, right? If he's not in a fucking, if he's functional enough to be on all these interviews, to say his thing, to have this political movement, with Nick Fuentes.
That's another thing, right? He's not incoherent when he speaks. I understand what he's saying. I don't agree with a lot of things he's saying, but I understand it perfectly fine. It's not incoherent babble,
right?
Like some crazy babble. It makes sense. I see where he's coming from. I get the charitable message that I can pull away from it. So to me, this isn't out of touch with reality, sort of crazy or whatever. This is just bombastic and. If you use the word crazy, the best way that it would apply is in the sense that it's just not within the norm or whatever.
Well, I think it's crazy in the sense that we live in a crazy world. I think Kanye and what's happening right now is a reflection of what kind of society we live in, with the internet, with the political situation, with all these kinds of cultural things going on and that have been going on for years. I don't think it's some sort of out of nowhere thing. And I think It is kind of weird, though. Obviously, we've crossed over into a new paradigm. I feel like seeing Kanye with Nick Fuentes and Milo. I guess they've severed ties.
Yeah, the whole thing is fucking Looney Tunes. It's just we would never expect this combination ever.
there seems to be some sort of political movement coming from that. And I think that's, I mean, with many different reasons for it, but one of them is like so previously it was Trump versus Biden. And it's like these two old hags who both people regard as corrupt, evil, liar politicians for the most part. The political scene is basically completely just outdated and uninteresting, and none of the candidates are saying anything of value. And so I think that's where Kanye sees an opportunity to, say something new and say something controversial. And I think that's why he doesn't care. And also he probably feels like he has, I don't know about nothing to lose, but, probably very little to lose after, a lot of his career with his sponsorships, his brand deals, his fashion, all that has been dropped. Now, so let's talk about the Jew thing for a second. Maybe I want to give my stance on it, and you can kind of tell me what you think as the resident Jew here. So Jews are actually somewhat of a similar cultural situation as Armenians in that they're a ethnic, religious minority that has a large diaspora, meaning they're spread around the globe in various communities, in various countries, with their own dialects, their own cultural norms. It's like, I'm sure Russian Jews or something are probably vastly different from, South American
Israeli
Jews.
Yeah, sure.
Or Israeli.
Also, it's relevant because Kanye was married to an Armenian.
Right. Yeah. And, all my life I've had many friends that were Jews. I've had many friends that were from different kinds of, from Ashkenazi to I've known Israeli people. And I think it's silly to think of Jews as a monolith, I'm trying to think of an example of something that would be a monolith even. I'm struggling to come up with that. But it's not like all Jews are interconnected in some sort of cultural network even. It's somewhat like a splintered culture, but with a shared identity of heritage, of lineage that dates back thousands of years, to the ancient Bible times, to the tribes of Israel. But I think it's a huge misnomer to just label all Jews or to group all Jews into one category. It's almost like I think it's tempting to do that because they are a minority group, but at the same, again, like the whole diaspora thing and the whole, again, with Armenians, I'm very familiar with this. It's like all Armenians, while they definitely care. I think Armenians would look after each other despite being different, but I definitely don't think they all think the same way or they all value the same things or even culturally similar throughout different nations and ethnic circles and all that.
Right.
So
they certainly wouldn't be like working together on some kind of like conspiratorial control mechanism.
No. And I think with Jews, it's like there's even more of a fragmentation. I could be wrong about this, but I think there's even more of a fragmentation with Jews where it's like, I think Jews are even more different, like Hasidic versus the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi. Like there's so many different practices and how seriously they take it. And it's, I'm sure it goes really deep that I don't have any full grasp of, but so there's a lot of variance there. And then, so obviously Kanye is coming from the perspective and, this is not unique to him, and probably he's been told this by people, Jews are, despite being a small minority, are definitely well represented
in positions of power.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is true.
And, and I think Jews tend to be smart. I think they tend to be, I remember my dad telling me actually when I was little, like Jews know the value of money and they look like after each other and they, from a young age, they're taught this and basically like we should be more like Jews. Like that's kind of not like our family, but like Armenians. Like Armenians should take a note from Israel, like how they do things, how they, I think they're good with numbers. I think they're good with money. I think they're good with abstractions, all these things. I think there also tends to be some neuroticism, like I'm thinking of Ben Shapiro or like, I don't know.
I think that just by the virtue of, Jews have been persecuted throughout history. And so the ones who have survived are the ones that had anxiety about surviving.
Mm-hmm. Generational trauma. That's a huge part of it. And I think sometimes that plays out in possibly overly paranoid ways where it's like maybe there's a sensorial aspect to it. Maybe things that aren't so anti-Semitic or things that are just jokes are taken too seriously or taken to heart or whatever, because there is this generational trauma associated with the Holocaust and other times of history like Egypt and slavery, where there's just this persecution against Jews. And again, similarly with Armenians, like there's a similar history there of persecution and genocide and all this. And yeah, like it hurts me as an Armenian if somebody is a genocide denier, or if they're joking about it. Like, I'm not going to be beat up about it. I'm not going to like hate someone, but it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good if somebody jokes about something your ancestors suffered from and died from and were tortured over. Like, that's always going to be awful. And I think Jews are, no matter where they're from, they're kind of connected through that. Well, that's one thing they're connected through, aside from the religion and the texts and all that, like to whatever extent they take that seriously. I think the Holocaust and other times of history are definitely unifying in that. So I think they're unified in surviving in, all these horrible atrocities and all that. But I think there also tends to be an element of, I might offend you here, but I think there is a little bit of a potential for self-victimization too, where it's like, I think some people will some Jews maybe, or some tendency within Jewish people could arise where it's like, okay, viewing themselves. Okay, here's a good example with black people, which are also not a monolith, but let's just say American blacks, which is a more specific group. I think there's not all American blacks are like this, not even the majority, but I think there's small tendencies to like view it as if they're, oh my God, do I even want to say this? I just feel like there's a victimization culture in certain groups, and it's understandable as to why, but I don't think it's good to view yourself as a victim ever. And on the reverse, despite there being Jews in positions of power, I don't think they're all like a Jew screwing over someone else in some high hierarchy of media or finance doesn't benefit you or the average Jew or any, like 99% of Jews. It might benefit their small cohort of friends in this network that they have in this small position. But that's true of anyone. It happens that there's a lot of Jews. But again, I think that's a lot of people, whether they're white or European or whatever they are. It's like the same thing happens where there's this nepotism, there's this bias of all that. And okay, I feel like I'm rambling. You go on. I don't know. What do you think about
Okay,
what
so
I've said so far?
first of all, just like on the note of, there is a tendency to be too cautious and sensitive. I will agree with that. Like, I think that, the ADL has shown that in the past, that they'll get up in arms over things that there isn't a need to get up in arms about. Now, and yeah, what you're saying
let me just finish one thing real quick. Sorry. This is what I was going to say. On the flip side of the victimization thing, because I think sometimes certain groups tend to view themselves as the victim for justifiable reasons. But in the case of like Kanye, or maybe not even Kanye specifically, but people who tend to blame Jews for everything, that's also a victim role. And I actually think that's far worse, because it's like, oh, these Jews are controlling my life and I have to blame them for all my problems. And if you really believe that, you're actually like giving more power to that idea than if you just actually believe you have some self-agency and power. So I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, in other words.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a lot to say about like why someone like Kanye goes pointing his fingers at entire groups of people, and especially the way he's doing it. Touch that on that in a second, but like just since we were already talking about this, like this whole notion of Kanye is blaming Jewish people, because there are so many Jews who are in like Hollywood and the media industry, and I guess banking and stuff like that. Like there are other people in these industries who aren't Jewish, who are just as corrupt. It isn't about being Jewish, okay, that makes these people bad. It's like the ones who are the bad offenders. It's simply that people who have corrupted tendencies, like will skew towards these things. Now, in the case of Hollywood, it's a little unique because Jews built Hollywood. They were. I believe I don't know the entire history behind it, but I believe that in the early 20th century or late 19th century, they were not allowed to work in a lot of various fields and whatever, and so they ended up creating the entertainment industry, and that's one of the reasons that there are so many Jews in there. But like, there needs to, and I think Lex Friedman put it very well. Like, there needs to be a separation between, like, yes, there are many Jews in this industry, but that has nothing to do with Jewish people at all. Like, nothing at all. Like, it's like there's so many Jews in the world that have nothing to do with these industries. Like myself, I'm like fucking. I work a sales job. Like, if the Jews are running the world and the banks and everything, like, why the fuck am I in this position? You know what I mean? So, like, all of that stuff is just so ridiculous that he would blame a whole group of people. And I don't even, like, I think everyone knows this. It doesn't even need to be said for the most part. The only people who disagree are the ones probably who are already anti-Semitic and believed these things prior to Kanye saying what he's saying.
And I think too, adding on to that, I think I think taking it a step further, like some people would allege that there's conspiracies, there's all these kind of efforts to subvert people taken upon Jews in positions of power or in different industries. But I actually think I don't think that's representative of Jewishness or Jewish heritage or culture. Yeah, it's like elite culture, which again, like there's plenty of families and names that I could think of that are not Jewish at all, but are doing the same exact thing, if not worse than the most evil Jew you could think of, for example. So it's like it's more of a manifestation of hierarchies, and I think Jews happen to be in a lot of those positions because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. But I don't think it's a outgrowth of being Jewish,
Exactly. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It has nothing to do with Jewish culture. It has to do with like individuals from Jewish communities that seek out this type of success and this type of climbing of hierarchies. Because
I think it actually creates more. I think it's actually beneficial to, whether you call them the elites or the globalists or whatever it is, like the evil people that run the world to whatever extent that they do, I think it's beneficial to them to get people to think that Jews are to blame, because Jews are such a larger group than them. It's like there's tens of millions of Jews around the world. And it's like, oh, well, if most people just think that it's Jews, that like the average Jew is like in on this, then that sort of alleviates some accountability or responsibility.
It's a very convenient scapegoat.
Yeah. So I think it's like a trap that a lot of people fall into to blame Jews. I realized that many years ago. Like, that is not,
and that applies to any
any group,
to any scapegoat,
right?
The thing with Kanye though that like is so, at least to me, is so very apparent from his interviews is that like he is like unable to point the finger at himself in any kind of fashion at all for any of the problems he has. Like, he goes on podcasts saying like, Jews are the reason people think I'm crazy. Jews are the reason my family got split up. And it's like, no, man, you are the reason for these things. And it's your actions. And like, you cannot put that on Jews. Like, you can't put that on anyone but yourself. Like, it's your actions that split up your family. It's your actions. You literally put I'm bipolar, it's awesome on your album cover. So like, it's no one else's fault but yours that you're considered bipolar. Okay. It's just such a ridiculous. And by the way, I don't know if you know this. Apparently, he wanted to name that album Hitler back in 2018.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. So like that's just like another small thing that bothers me.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think is like the biggest, so the Hitler thing, right?
Yeah.
He goes on Alex Jones' show and starts talking about like, I love everyone. I love Hitler. I love Nazis. Even before he said, I love the surgeon that caused my mom's death. That was a couple years back.
Yeah.
And he's sort of approaching it in this like Jesus sort of way, where it's like, Jesus, everyone is worthy of love. Jesus loved murderers and rapists. You know, like he's trying to be Christ-like when he says this, or at least, you know, that's what he's claiming. But to me, like, you can't just LARP as Jesus. Jesus didn't come to these conclusions just like because someone told him to. Like he went through spiritual growth and like transcendence to come to these ideas. And I think that like it's so clear to me that Kanye is angry and has a lot of hate in his heart. And someone who loves as much as he says he doesn't have that much hate in their heart, you know? And so what I see with Kanye is that like he's trying to be this like spiritual Jesus type person, a person who has essentially completely diminished their ego to a small little thing in order to make room for all the love that they have for everyone, all of humanity. And he has a huge ego. He's the opposite. So he's trying to like do it from this egoic perspective where like he believes himself to be greater as a result of like he sees himself as a vessel of God. He even says this on InfoWars. And it's like everything he's doing is actually for himself and not for humanity. Whereas everything Jesus did was for humanity and not for himself, you know? I think that like that is probably the most dangerous thing about Kanye's behavior in the last little while, personally.
I would say, and I do love Kanye, but I would say he's embodying the role of an antichrist figure.
Yes.
Because I think you're right that it's like the opposite. It's like, I think it's like an ego-based form. It's like going the opposite way, because I think the whole central message of Jesus was living your life in service to others.
Yes.
And I've been thinking about that a lot myself, and it's like sometimes I've tried to, I don't know, I think I've embodied the role of a preacher myself, where like I'm almost talking down to people, or it comes off that way even when I don't intend to, because it's coming from maybe a place of ego or a place of self understanding or even self-awareness. But I think to really be Christ-like is to pretty much give up the self and actually just be in service to others and love others.
Exactly.
And not through just words, but obviously through actions. And that's really fucking hard. Like that's incredibly hard. But I think
I would say almost no one alive has reached a point of like spiritual growth that like Christ did. You know what I mean? Maybe there are some people out there, but you probably don't know about them.
Yeah, but although I do think it's a good goal to aspire to, for sure. I think that's the highest value to aspire to be one.
You know, the road to hell paved with good intentions.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I
think that's kind of what's happening here.
Yeah. And I think with the Hitler thing, I don't even know if probably Kanye is not even thinking this, but I think a much better way to view Hitler, because I think there is this tendency to view Hitler and other historical figures as like just the devil, like basically the devil. And it's like, okay, there's certainly, obviously they were evil, you know, but I think they were also human. And in that, Peterson talks about this, and I really like how he says it, like we're all capable of the greatest evil, and that's within everyone. And I think we're also capable of doing really great, good things, maybe even being Christ-like. But I think there's this capability for evil, and I think to just put Hitler in a separate category from all other humans is denying that we're capable of the same evil. And I actually think that's where, I think that connects to the Holocaust a little bit, or the message of never forget, you know, because it's like part of that is acknowledging that this evil can arise again, and it doesn't arise out of, you know, some super clear place of like, oh, these are the bad guys. It arises within us, within average people that you wouldn't expect.
And like how all the people who were, you know, at one point ordinary, regular, nice people in Germany got twisted into people that would kill like pregnant women.
Exactly.
Because they were just so like the ideology and everything, how it slowly corrupted them. Right. And you know, like, truthfully, I think that like on the point of like that, on that point that we can all be Hitler, and that Hitler had elements inside of him that were, you know, he was not just like 100% bad and evil. There were things in him that were like, there was probably love in him too somewhere. You know, Like that is, I think that's true and something that people should know. But I think that the way Kanye went about bringing that point to the public was fucking terrible. It was like some of the worst execution I've ever seen. And also, I just I'm not so sure if like the masses are in a place where they would be able to like digest that information yet. Even like I think that's like a very nuanced thing for a lot of people that they might not get. Because it's like it just comes. It's too easy for it to come off sounding like you're pardoning Hitler or something, which is like not the case. It's simply recognizing his humanity. But yeah, like I think the
Peterson
whole
did it best. But yeah,
Peterson did it way better for sure. But I mean, even like look at, like, I guarantee you that most people who hear that, like they get triggered and don't digest it either. Like I remember just simply when he was on the H3 podcast, and then like a couple years later, someone like dug up a clip from it where he talked about how anyone could become a Nazi, and that got like pretty much what we're talking about right now, and that got like turned into like a little cancellation moment, and then H3 like deleted the episode and all this stuff. So like even, you know, that was really recently. So like, and it was a very much well put together point, and it seemed very obvious to me what he was saying, but like even that didn't really matter. So that's why I just think like society is not ready to hear such a thing.
See, I think Kanye in a way is also like coming out. I don't know, like you could call it cancel culture or sensitivity or just censorship or whatever you want to call it. But I think there's been such a lack of, God, I hate this word now, nuance, because it's like everyone uses the word. It's like so overused, obviously. But there's been such a lack of nuance. Everything's so polarized on the internet, and it's been getting more and more that way, that I think Kanye is like, fuck it. I'm just gonna literally just say whatever, like completely. You know that episode of Black Mirror where at the end they're not allowed to say whatever. It's like a really controlled society, and they have to be good people, and they have like reputation stars. And then at the end they're like, it's like this woman, and she's in jail, and there's like a black guy, he's also in jail, and then they like look at each other and they just start screaming, and it's kind of like meant to show that they're being like feeling free in jail a little bit, because they can just say whatever, I guess.
Yeah, I think he's definitely doing that. Like, and that's something that Sneeko was talking about recently, which is that like he said the most cancelable thing, and by doing so is like ending cancel culture, because it's like he's basically like, I'm still here, you can't stop me, like that kind of mentality.
Mm-hmm. Which makes me wonder how much of what he's saying is performance. Not that he doesn't. I don't mean that like, oh, he doesn't believe anything he's saying. I don't mean that. I mean like, I think he's literally just, he's intentionally not articulating himself.
I think that's giving him way too much credit. Like Kanye is not the kind of person that has like the strategic, like filter, highly detailed mind to like execute something like that. He is, I think the way he put it on the InfoWars podcast or whatever is pretty damn accurate. He basically described himself as a battering ram and said that everyone else is a SWAT team picking up after him.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like he's I think a lot of what goes on in the media, especially, and in general in life, is based around attention. And the internet sort of shows that through metrics, through numbers, through views, through Twitter feeds, all this shit. It's like, it's all a game of attention. And I think Kanye's intention is to get attention in a way that will, I guess, move culture in a certain direction or something. To what means exactly, who knows? I'm not fully aware. But in that, what I'm saying is like, I don't think he's interested in saying what he said about Hitler in a way that's going to be comfortable for people. I think he's fine with being as offensive, as uncomfortable as possible. Whereas like, whenever I speak to someone, especially if it's on a public platform, like even right now, like I think about what I'm going to say, and I think that's a good thing to do generally, because it makes you a better person, it makes you a smarter person, makes you able to communicate better. But I think Kanye is not, his goals are, he doesn't have that. None of those things are his goal. I think his goal is, it's sort of like radical an agenda. Change. Yeah, like I think he wants to enact some sort of radical change. Yeah.
I do think that's true. He's definitely doing that. But the problem is that I don't think that he cares about any of the consequences of like that method outside of it getting across like the visionary change he's looking for, right? So I feel like, whatever negatives come with his strategy, like he does not care. It is not important to him because he sees it's like his mission is highest priority and of greatest importance for humanity. And so whatever bad things happen, it'll be worth it or something like that. That's the kind of the vibe I get from what he's doing right now.
Maybe. Well, and that would kind of tie in with what I mean by the Antichrist figure. And I don't think that's
exactly, yeah.
exclusive to
I was
him.
about to say, it ties back into the whole egoic Jesus thing.
Yeah. And I don't think he's the only Antichrist or whatever. I think that's just a role that people embody as it pertains to ego and
right.
Yeah, changing the world and all that.
But yeah, that's essentially like my biggest problem with what Kanye is doing right now is, it's that it's all in self-interest. It's just his vision of what is better for humanity and how things should go. And of course that it's coupled with like just a retarded amount of misinformation. Just so much, like this man fucking goes on Alex Jones' thing and talks about how Hitler invented the microphone, which is just like the stupidest fucking, like, takes 2 seconds for him to find out that the microphone was invented by a black man named James West. Actually shares a last name with him. And he took credit away from a black man and gave it to Hitler, which is just like the stupidest thing ever.
What if that was his great grandfather?
It could have, yeah, literally. And it's just like, why should I listen to a goddamn thing you're saying if you can't even like fact check the simplest of things? Like you go out here and you're making all the now when he goes on there and he starts saying like 50 million babies die a year.
I discredits him to just kind of say things willy-nilly that aren't.
It just shows like I don't know that he knows a goddamn thing that he's talking about when it comes to actual facts. Like I understand that like he has a understanding of people and like he knows what he's feeling and he knows his experiences. But outside of that, like anything that he says that references any kind of fact, I am inclined to believe is not true at this point.
Yeah. I think also something to mention is there's definitely a few people sort of whispering in his ear and have been for years. Like Louis Farrakhan is one of them.
Yeah.
And he's a pretty extremist.
He definitely talked about having conversations with Farrakhan recently.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know that much about Farrakhan, but I know
supremacist.
he's like a really radical,
He's a black supremacist.
Yeah.
And he's pretty anti-Semitic, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was like feeding Kanye all kinds of misinformation about Jews and the Holocaust. Because now Kanye is saying the Holocaust Hitler didn't kill 6 million Jews. Look into the facts, he says. So like, I'm sure that's coming from Farrakhan or whoever the hell is telling him about this stuff. And I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing. I don't know how like someone like Sneeko, for example, isn't embarrassed by like this blatant.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about Sneeko and maybe Nick for a minute, because I mean that's almost as bizarre as Kanye saying all these things. It, to me, is like them being there. Like it's just such a bizarre pairing of people.
The whole thing is so nonsensical. In this, like, think about this. Okay, like Nick Fuentes has publicly said like. He claims right now that he's not a white supremacist, but he has actually advocated for a white ethno-state in the past.
Yeah, well, he advocated for a
he is
Catholic
helping a black man
ethno-state.
Yeah, he's helping a black man run for president, which is like in itself kind of funny. It's like almost like a comedy movie.
Yeah, it is. It so is. Yes.
And then they had Milo as part of their group, right?
Yeah.
Who I believe is a Jew.
Yeah,
Or
he's
maybe
like,
I'm
I think
wrong
he's
about
half
that.
Jew. I think he might be on his dad's side or something.
Okay, let's say he's not a Jew.
Okay.
But what I find really funny, and this was on Alex Jones on InfoWars. So Milo wasn't with them on InfoWars because I guess he's been like taken out of the group, and the reason he got taken out of the group was because their friend, I forget her name, told them to, and that friend of theirs is a Jew, which is like So this Jew told Kanye what to do, and he listened while complaining about Jews controlling him, while his white supremacist campaign manager also was down
Who was
with all of
following
this.
the black leader.
Yeah.
It is.
It's like none of this makes any sense.
It's like the Matrix is breaking. It's really bizarre. It's very strange. It's very strange.
It's honestly like a cartoon. Like I don't even know how else to put it at this point. Like,
and I can't tell. We're so past the point of what is like reality anymore that I can't tell whether this is like a true, like the most accurate representation of where we are in reality right now, or just like some fiction that was strung together by a bunch of weird circumstances. Like I don't know. It's very weird to like. I guess we'll probably look back in a few years, if we can, hopefully, and see where what this was. But it's really hard to like. It's a very It's a lot to process.
It's ridiculous. I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
And also just like as like Kanye running for president, like I'm sure he believes that he has a very strong chance at winning. But with him in the like there's like him, DeSantis, and Trump, all three of them going, like I can't see him doing anything if he has any kind of momentum at all I can see him doing is like splitting up the vote. And then like you know what I mean?
Yeah, most likely. I mean, I personally don't think voting or politics matters anymore at all. I think it's possible that I don't know. I mean, Kanye probably does believe he can win for sure. But I think you're right. I think like that just mostly serves to be a further like bombastic statement of self-aggrandizing.
Yeah.
But it's like a platform, you know. It's like it's kind of gives a purpose or a goal because I think what we're seeing is the start of like a political party or movement to whatever extent that people follow it. Granted, I think most people are pretty either totally against Kanye now or taken aback by all this or whatever. You know, like I don't think the reaction has been really supportive.
I think that like he crossed a line that like people, even the people who thought he was being like wild, didn't think he would cross. And honestly, I'm kind of relieved that he crossed that line personally, because when he started on about all this shit, all I could see online everywhere I went was like, he's right, fuck the Jews and blah, blah, blah. I was getting, you know, like I have a little Jew anxiety. I was getting worried about that. I was like, fuck, man. Like I already know that for the last like 10, 15 years, like hate crimes against Jews have been on the rise, like 100% year over year. So combine that with Kanye doing this, such an influential guy, I was a little worried. And like there was no moves to make either. It was like, I don't want to censor him. I'm against censorship, and also censoring him would look bad because people would say like, look what the Jews did. So like it was, you know, like there was no
Slush did.
Good move. Look what Slush did. There was no good move, you know, to like quell the anger he was stirring up in people in terms of against Jews. But now he said something so like disagreeable, so far that everyone is like, oh, wait, fuck this is bad, fuck Kanye. And now anyone who's left standing being like, yeah, Kanye's right, fuck the Jews, looks like they can't hide in the public as easily as they could like 2 weeks ago. You know what I mean? And that's, for me, I personally, I feel like this was the best possible outcome after it started.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm saying we'll have to see in a few years or however long, maybe a few weeks. But because are you aware? There's this concept called the Overton window. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's like where people's like the two sides of the extremes and how it shifts.
Yeah,
where everyone kind of centers.
Well,
around.
I think Kanye has shifted the Overton window or shattered it or something. I don't know. He's definitely altered that. And where that's going to lead to exactly, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know. I think it would just be on so many levels such a tragedy if like Jew hatred or anti-Semitism was in any way mainstreamed again, because number one, we would be repeating the same persecution and things, or, you know, even if it doesn't get to like a Holocaust level, it's still just a horrible thing to persecute an entire group over whatever, over like a small number of people you dislike or whatever. But also it would just be like such a squandered opportunity to learn from history and like, hey, blaming entire groups of people for corruption and evil deeds is not a way forward. Like, I feel like we have an opportunity, especially now, to move past all that and find some like higher ways of communicating or of being or something. But to be reduced to that would be horrible. But I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I think he's definitely shifted the Overton window, and where that's going to lead to, I don't know.
Towards the right?
What'd you say?
Like he shifted it towards like conservatism or what?
No, I don't know. Maybe he shifted it more towards anti-Semitism being more normalized, or he shifted it more towards like destigmatizing Hitler or like Nazis or something like that, or blaming Jews, destigmatizing blaming Jews or something like that, possibly.
Okay, I think I misunderstood, but I thought Overton window was just like about how left or right people's like values.
Well, it's like it is, but it's like the box in which there are a range of opinions that are expressed openly. And it's like, if somebody says something that's like a prominent figure that's really, or holds a position that's really extreme to the right or the left, then, you know, the people, then
it plays a part in normalizing that sort of direction of thinking.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Got it.
So, you know,
I mean, I hope not. Fuck. But, it's hard to say. That's not something we can really speak on at this point in time, honestly. Like you said, we'll have to see in like as time goes on. I think that for the most part, the main reaction is going to be like, you know what? Actually, like, there's probably going to be an increased number of people who are going to like defend the concept that Hitler is human and not exclusively evil, which maybe is a good thing, but probably I still think that society isn't ready for that kind of thinking, and it'll probably just lead to more anti-Semitism.
It would be a good thing if it didn't lead to anti-Semitism. That's what I mean. Because then
it would be if we were like more evolved in terms of like the average person's perspectives and the way they think and how their values worked. Sure, it would be a good thing. I just don't think we're there at all. Like we're not even at the point now where we can like handle progressive thinking well. Like, I think that like progressives, you know, the super progressives with all their like all the like empathy for everyone stuff, like I think that comes from a very good place. But I think that like clearly we're not executing it well, you know, otherwise so many people wouldn't be pissed off about it, and the red pill wouldn't be such a big thing as well if the progressives were more better in their execution. So, like, I think we're not even at the point yet where, like, that stuff is, like, being done right. And this, like, Hitler thing is way beyond that, in my opinion. It's, like, much further down the line of a, like, evolution of, like, the way we think about stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Should we... I don't even know. I feel like should we even watch the clips? I mean, I feel like we kind of covered it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like up to you.
I don't know. Watch like a couple, I guess, but
yeah, I think that in the clips, like, we're probably just gonna end up like, at least I'm just gonna be like very tempted to like correct the misinformation that he puts out there. You know, like, I think at one point I don't remember which podcast it was, but he says something about like, oh, the definition of anti-Semitic claims that like you can't say that there are Jews in media, which is like not the definition of anti-Semitic. Obviously, there is like a stipulation that says like to claim that Jews control the media or our systems of information is anti-Semitic, but which is totally what he's doing. But you know, he's doing kind of like a straw man when he says, you know, just simply claiming there are Jews in media is that's not why people think you're anti-Semitic, Kanye. Like, it's so stupid. And then like also he compares it at one point to like, oh, but it's okay to say the black vote, but it's not okay to say Jews control media, which is like, again, just like so incredibly like, just such, I don't know, like it's incredible to me how like illogical of a statement that is. because it's like in voting, everyone is equally powerful, or supposed to be at least in like a non-corrupt society. So it's like, the black vote makes sense in that context. But anyways,
All right, let me pull up the document we got here. Actually, I want to see the Sneeko clip first.
Well, what about Hitler? Hitler was motivating people. And I'm like, well, yeah, he was speaking some truth. He mobilized Germany in a time where everybody was against him. He furthered a lot of technological advancements. Hitler did a lot of good. He's like, are you saying Hitler did some good things? And I'm like, yeah, he did. And they're like, gotcha. And he clipped it up and put it on Twitter. And it had all the socialists, all the leftists.
I just want to pause right there. I learned in my history class, like my teacher told us, and I think it makes sense. Like, yeah, there's obviously a reason Hitler rose to power. Like, he was resonating with people. The trains ran on time. Like, there was a...
He brought the economy back in Germany post World War I, which was like complete depression.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, yeah, like he could be a horribly evil, genocidal person, and that can be true. But also, like, you can see how someone like that rises to power is not because they start out as openly being evil and genocidal. It's like, and that
may have been like he definitely did so many like unspeakably evil things that like we should remember him as someone who was evil, but like there was some percentage of him that did things that there was a reason he won. There were things that he did that made Germany better, sort of, at least economically. And in his own eyes, I'm 100% certain that Hitler believed himself to be doing justice in his own eyes, like from his perspective, I'm sure he thought what he was doing was good, even the bad stuff.
Yeah. But that again goes to the road with intention, road to hell paved with good intention.
Road to hell, yeah.
Because it's like, okay, I also don't think Kanye wants to genocide Jews, and he probably, maybe he doesn't want to at all. But it's like, I think the road to hell thing is like, well, but you don't know what's going to. I think there is a bit of like a. Yeah, it's like there's a bit of a recklessness that comes with promoting certain ideas or acting like certain ideas are or certain people are good or whatever. Like, putting out certain rhetoric can lead to dangerous consequences, even if that's not your intention. And also, maybe it wasn't Hitler's intention initially to kill Jews either. But, it's like, I do think it's important to also be aware of where things can lead to if you're not careful. So, yeah,
definitely. And I don't think that Sneeko takes that in at all. I mean, Sneeko's like 24 years old or something. Like, it's pretty young. It's a little easier for me to be like, okay, like you'll hopefully grow up and realize like the power of like of consequence. With Kanye, there isn't really that excuse. Like, he should know this by now, especially as someone with children. But yeah, I don't know. Also, like, I think there's just like a degree of opportunistic thinking within all of this, which is why I feel like Sneeko is attached. I feel like Sneeko and all the Red Pill people, like, they're very much about like take advantage of every opportunity. It doesn't matter like how it affects people. It matters like how it affects you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why
Sneeko was a big fan of Andrew Tate right before this. He was like dressing like Andrew Tate and shit.
Yeah, he was like had him on his podcast or whatever. And I kind of think that's why you see like in this clip, Sneeko, his takeaway about like he's glad that Kanye said all this because, well, I guess he hasn't really got into it yet, but he's effectively talking about how it ends cancel culture.
Okay, should we continue?
Yeah.
So what else they got? What else they got? He said the worst thing that cancel culture says you can possibly say. I'm a Nazi. All people are good, especially Hitler. That's it. Kanye is a puppet. Bro, there's these fucking schizos in the chat. He's not. If Ye was a puppet, then why would he have said that? So I'm glad he said that, and it's empowering in a way because you can't accuse us of being like they put up in the article. Chat, type of one if you saw that article. And
gas all Jews in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you have to say about that?
I don't think he's right. Like, I don't think cancel culture is going to be over at all. And in fact, if anything, like Kanye is just like more like no one will want to associate with Kanye, as we're already seeing. And I just think that like Kanye is destroying his legacy, or like is destroying any opportunities he has for success in the future, whatever. I don't think cancel culture is going to be over from what Kanye did at all. And I don't think this is how you end cancel culture either. You don't end it by like saying just like the craziest thing you could say. You know, you want to end cancel culture like you continue to make things that are great after getting canceled, and sort of like as all the people continue, as more and more people get canceled and they start forming their like alternative to like the mainstream, as long as they're producing things of quality and people flock to that, then they're uncancelable, right?
I'm not sure how comparable this is, but I think a lot about the 90s and how culture was shifted then, and I think there was a lot of censorship and like and all these kinds of ways to keep artists and people down initially, especially in the 80s actually. And then in the 90s, you had this breakout where I think artists were kind of owning the explicit label. They were owning the bad boy look or aesthetic or whatever. Like people were willing to just be as controversial, as raw, as noisy, as grungy as possible. But I think that did work. But I think the reason that worked was because, well, I guess you could say this is an expression too. I think that was a higher form of expression. I think that was an artistic.
Well, it wasn't like crazy for the sake of crazy, right? It was like it was like, and it wasn't also violent in any way. Not necessarily that Kanye is violent, but like we're talking about like grunge and counterculture of the 90s, right? So like these are people who were like going through a certain experience, being like growing up in the American suburbs. And the media at that time didn't portray that experience. They portrayed more of like a false, perfect American life. And
I think something similar is happening now. But I think there's a difference in how you move past that. And I think the way it was done in the 90s was better than it is now. I don't know. I think it has something to do with the music, with expression, which is funny because obviously Kanye is a musician. But I don't know. I feel like it's, again, I feel like going on these shows, these podcasts, it is sort of like a political route to take it. And I think politics is below artistry in terms of influence and in terms of the lasting impact it has. I think this is I think what happened was a pressure release valve from cancel culture. I think it's like a lot of people feel like Trump. Okay, Trump was like that in 2016. But I think probably similar to Trump, if I were to make a prediction, I think probably similar to Trump, Kanye might have somewhat of a following. He might, he'll probably continue getting a lot of media attention, probably mostly negative, but I think that'll also kind of help him.
But if we look at Trump, you know, Trump was elected president in 2016, cancel culture didn't like die down after.
No,
it actually got
way worse. Right.
Yeah.
And Trump was pretty ineffective as a leader. He wasn't a great president. He wasn't a good person. I mean, you know, these aren't crazy revelations, but I think when a lot of people that I knew, I never got swept up in this, but a lot of people that I knew were like, oh, like super pro Trump and like, oh, you know, like fuck the media and fuck all this. And I did like that Trump was saying things that were against the media. I did like that. And it was empowering and it was a pressure release valve. And in a way, like, I do kind of admire that Kanye is just willing to like say whatever the fuck on all these shows and walk out of these shows and whatever. It's like, yeah, there's something about that is like cathartic almost. But is it actually a good path forward in the long term? Is it actually something that's going to benefit us, or is it just going to set us back ultimately? And I don't know. I think it's probably not going to be very effective. I think if anything, it might make things worse in the long term with cancel culture or whatever that ends up being. You know, maybe it's some sort of even worse version of cancel culture, some authoritarian fucking shit. But
ironically, I think that the biggest, in terms of cancel culture, like the biggest step or move we've made recently that goes against cancel culture is actually, and people are probably going to disagree with me here, but Elon Musk buying Twitter, because now we're in a situation with that where I believe I mean, I don't know. I don't keep too up to date with this, but I think that like the App Store and Google Play Store, they're both like threatening to remove Twitter from their stores. And if they do that, that would actually be huge for cancel culture, because now we would have like, it's not like people are going to stop going on Twitter just because they're not on the Play Store. You know, like people are still going to use Twitter, but the people will have to go it'll be decentralized essentially. People will have to go to Twitter's website to download the app or some shit, and that's kind of huge in terms of like, okay, well now there is like a social media platform that doesn't give a fuck about what Apple or Google thinks. That's something that I see as being like a step towards breaking cancel culture. You know what Kanye could do to break cancel culture? Put out a good album. But I don't think he's capable of doing that anymore. Personally, I mean, I don't know. Like, I wasn't big on Donda. Donda 2 is like, what I heard from it didn't sound very good either. And like, I don't know. Like, I kind of highly doubt that he's going to put out a good album. But if you put out like a college dropout level album, that would make things like people would be conflicted. You know?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know where this is all going to lead. It's definitely been it's been a weird thing to watch. I mean, and I don't sit down and watch the whole things either. I think partially because I know a lot of it is just nonsense and whatever. And I don't think it's about the actual information that's exchanged. I mean, I listened to the Lex Friedman thing and like the Tim Pool stuff or whatever, but it's, it is kind of like this big show that's unfolding, this drama that's unfolding rather. And, I guess we'll see where it leads to culturally.
Where it leads, I have no fucking clue. I mean, I think that Sneako's take here that it's breaking cancel culture. I think that like, I'm surprised that he's saying this instead of what we were just talking about with like the Jesus love stuff, because I think that's
the stronger message.
Yeah, like to me that was what Kanye was saying, and it's like he's misunderstanding that, which is surprising because I mean, based on this video, like I'm assuming he's hanging out with Kanye. So, like, I don't know how he's getting that wrong.
You know, maybe here's the distinction. It's like to actually transcend the cultural operating system that's keeping things that's trying to keep things under control and restrained. I don't think it's enough to just be a counter reaction. I think you actually have to transcend it in some way by like presenting something better, like a better alternative, like a better version or view of the world.
That's why I was saying that with Twitter, because it's like, okay, well, if you have like this giant social media platform that doesn't require like two of the biggest tech companies in the world to exist, now you're like you're proving that alternatives to like the mainstream corporate technocracy or whatever is possible.
Right.
Even though Twitter is probably still just going to continue to be like a corporate shithole, most likely. Like I wouldn't expect it to be anything better, but
no, but I do agree. I do agree. I mean, I think already just the fact that they've removed verification as like this special badge for certain people is a really good step, actually. So it's kind of removed a hierarchy off of Twitter. So I agree. I do think Twitter, the acquisition and what Elon's done so far is like highly effective in shifting the culture in more of a better direction that's more about free expression. But even then, like I would never place, I think this is a problem people fall into with Elon too, is like they idolize Elon and it's like, oh, this guy's going to save us. It's like, no, like he could do some good things and hopefully he does, but
he's mostly just acting in self-interest.
Yeah. So, you know, like
it's just that his interests happen to align more with, like, I guess like the general population than someone like Bill Gates or like whoever, like Tim Cook or something like that.
Like basically, if Jesus was alive today, I don't think he would have a big, you know, I don't think he'd be world famous Twitter following. You know, I don't think he would be in Elon's position or Kanye's position or any of these people's positions. It's like I don't think that's so. In that way, I do think it's like the ego.
He'd be like a YouTuber with 2,000 subscribers or something.
Yeah. So. Should we finish this, or I don't even? Does he say anything else?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like at the end, like we can finish this video, but he let's put it on like 1.5 speed or something. Like I don't know, I don't need to see all this like gas the Jews in his chat.
Yeah, that's not great to see. That's pretty bad.
There's a lot of it. I've seen this clip already, so
just straight up lying, and it's just like a really pale white guy making an article calling me racist. Nobody buys it anymore. I don't think anyone believes it. Did everyone in the chat actually think I'm racist? And if you just own it, if you just say, yeah, I'm a racist, I'm a misogynist, I'm an incel, I'm homophobic, I'm anti-Semitic, I'm a Nazi, what else do they got? They got nothing else. So fuck it. The best thing to do to fight cancel culture is just own it. And Ye's at a point where he's lost every single deal. He's been debanked. He's lost everything. Any association. There's nobody that can tell him what to say anymore. So what does he have to lose? He has entire freedom to just say exactly what he feels like saying. And that's a level of freedom that pretty much no...
We don't fuck with Jews. Jesus Christ. Just another thing I just want to point out, because Ye's been talking about, oh, they froze my bank accounts. And Sneako's now saying, oh, he was debanked. So then Kanye actually talked about this himself. His bank accounts were frozen by the IRS because he owed $60 million in taxes and didn't pay them for 2 years.
Jesus Christ.
So it's not because of what he's been saying. It's just because he owes so much money that he hasn't paid it, and they're allowed to temporarily freeze your bank account when you do that.
Okay.
So just some more misinformation being used in there.
Bot to afterwards, even me saying that right now, I want to say, well, what he did wasn't, of course he shouldn't have killed people, of course he shouldn't have went to war, of course he was using, we all know he wasn't a good person, but he did good things too. Finally someone said it. And I've been thinking about that a lot the past 2 days, like, is it even still possible to win? Is it even still possible, like, how are you going to win over the popular vote? And I genuinely believe in what Ye's doing. I believe in love speech. I believe in following Jesus. And we really need religion back in the West. We need some...
See, okay, that's also one place where I really fundamentally disagree, and I think that's where it's leading things astray, is because it's like he said, how is it possible to win back the vote? I think voting... I honestly, maybe this is more... Maybe they're not extreme enough, because I think voting is over. I think politics is over. I don't think politics matters. I don't think voting matters. I don't think that's the way you save the world.
Well, both sides of the like two-party system in America are claiming that the other one is like faking votes or whatever, or like fraudulent. Yeah. They're both claiming like they're going to rig the election from both sides. So yeah, I agree with you. Like, how can you? What's the point of voting if it's rigged from both sides? Like,
and I think Kanye, Sneako, and Nick, what unites them all is that they believe that some political action is gonna be like the way forward, and I don't believe that. I don't think political action is the way forward. I think artistic expression, cultural expression, some sort of like more transcendent form of communication and expression that reaches people on an emotional level, that actually isn't just all rhetoric and money, which politics is, and corruption basically. I think that's the way. I think we have to change our view of what politics is fundamentally. But anyways, that's basically the clip. I mean, yeah, there's obviously the other clips, but do you want to watch them?
The other clips are like much longer, and I honestly like, fuck it. Like, I don't think we need to watch those.
We kind of, people get the idea. You've probably, if you're watching this, you've probably seen it by now.
Yeah, exactly. So. Like it's been said, it's been done. I just think like just seeing Sneako though, it's just so fucking funny to me, because like before we got on this, like started recording this, I saw like this clip of like I don't know, like some TMZ type people coming up to Sneako and like interviewing him and like asking his political opinions, and I just think it's like what the fuck does Sneako know? Like why do you care what he thinks? Like, this guy has like at no point at all like proven himself to be like he like Kanye. I'm this in much the same fashion that I'm kind of like ridiculing Kanye for being just completely self-absorbed and acting in self-interest. Like, that's all Sneako has mostly done through his content as far as I've known him. Like, this guy, I've always admired Sneako's content. I think it's artistic and well made, but I always had like the small caveat of like, yeah, he's like, he's
full of himself.
He's like a philosopher for like teenagers who like haven't learned like these sort of like fundamental lessons yet that he's like putting out there. And so like, I don't know, I just think it's kind of funny to like be like, yeah, man, what is this 24-year-old kid who's like never really had any sort of like political career before? What is your opinion on like the state of the world and how we should operate? Like, what the fuck does he know? Like, I don't know. It's just so stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think part of my idealism would would say, well, we do need that, like, you know, I don't know if it's Sneeko. I don't think it's Sneeko, but I think we do need like some
A fresh perspective.
and like and all that. I think there's definitely something.
Yeah, but
to that.
certainly with someone who like knows what's going on a little bit more. I feel like Sneeko doesn't really know what's going on, like in the world.
sure,
like this man is not equipped to speak on like global politics.
No.
And it's just the fact that we're at a point now where people are like looking to him for that kind of information.
Well, okay, and I'll
is
say to qualify what I've been saying this whole time, and somewhat what you've been saying. I don't think anyone is qualified to speak on global politics, and I think that's the whole point. Global politics is way too complicated now to make sense of, and what it's really controlled by is money. That's the end of the day. It's like people think it's controlled by Jews, or they think it's controlled by Rothschild, or like some family, or the U.S. or whatever. It's like, no, it's controlled by money, by resources, industry. I mean, that's where everything is.
Yeah.
If you look at, I view it like technology. You know, like our culture, our environment, our politics are all downstream from our technology, because that is what occupies our mind, our time, how we live our lives, how we communicate. And so, I mean, I actually think if you really want to make real change, like I'll say right now, I think the real change comes with technology and expression. And I think like, yeah, I mean, there's ways to do that, but that's probably another topic. But in other words, nobody's equipped to have answers for global political situations, because they're incredibly complex, and more complex than they've ever been at any point in history.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I mean, someone's got to have some sort of like, maybe no one's equipped enough, and like we have to, like, I see what you're saying. Like, it's so complicated, and that it really just comes down to what money, as you said, and I 100% agree with that. Like, I think that when people talk about like, oh, like people are controlling the world, like people are doing what they can to make as much money as they can, and that is what's controlling the world. But like there needs to be people who make decisions at the end of the day. Like, we can't have no system. We can't just have anarchy, right?
No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I'm systems versus non-systems. I'm very like, that's a really deep philosophical thing, because I agree. I mean, I think we need structure and we need order.
Yeah. It's like unavoidable that politics exists, I think. Like, you can't just have no politics, because it's like otherwise you have anarchy.
I feel like some elements are heading towards that. I don't know if it's going to be literal anarchy.
Towards anarchy?
Yeah, like I think there's different forms of anarchy. I think there's like, I don't know. I think there is a sort of breakdown of order occurring. But I fear
Maybe
that out of all this craziness, at the end of all this craziness, what I really do not want is a heavy pushback of authoritarianism and
right, like a power vacuum kind of thing.
Yeah, tyranny and all these horrible things. And historically, again, like this is why it's good to know history. World again, like I guess Hitler's a great example of this, but many other times in history, it's like, yeah, leading up to these extremely authoritarian regimes is a tendency to kind of blame, Jews, or blame specific groups of people, and then rile people up against them, and have all these highly populist movements, political movements, and all these things. So that's not a great path generally throughout history.
I mean, if we start to see like a consolidating of media even further than it already is, like that's fucking terrifying. You know what I mean? Like, I want that shit. I would like media to be as decentralized as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's where, like, back to the Twitter thing, like that's where I have some.
It's a
hope
practical step, because it's like, okay, logistically, it's no longer owned by, or it's no longer controlled by the same people, and it's like, maybe Elon could have. I'm not an Elon stan, but it's like Elon could have possibly lived his whole life or much of his career like blaming Jews for some mishaps that he had with Jews or something, right? But he's also fully capable of being the richest person in the world, and he's not Jewish. And so it's like, I don't know, the more power you give any group of people or anyone that you think is evil or all these things, it's like, it's good to recognize darkness and evil because it is out there in the world. And a lot of people in positions of power are doing bad things, but that's also within you. And the ability to overcome that is also within you, and everything is within you. And like, that's the most powerful message, I think, of all.
Yeah, I agree.
That's where I would like for us. I mean, I'm saying that, I understand that in concept, but like to get there,
To actualize
yeah,
it.
that God knows how to get there, but that would be a nice goal, I guess. Like the world I want to
well, I
live
would
in
say
is
that-
the one where everyone has won the battle within themselves.
This is just going back to Christ, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like that's like the world Christ wanted to live in, like the world where everyone embraced like the love in their hearts and like let that guide them, as opposed to like when we talk about stuff like, oh, Hitler is road to hell, paved with good intentions type of thing, where like he believes what he's doing is good. It's not because he's embracing the love in his heart, it's because he's embracing the anger and he's acting out of anger. Same thing with Kanye, acting out of anger for the situation that he's in, not out of love. I don't care how much he says
anger
love,
or
it's not out of
fear
love.
or hurt or resentment, whatever it is, but it's like, I just don't think that's the way
Yeah.
forward. Yeah.
It's not love. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like he's not acting out of love, and like any of this like other side of the spectrum of love, whatever you want to like specifically name it, like it's like you said, it's not the way forward, and it is it's the way forward to like a worse world basically, and that's not what I want, and that's why I have a lot of respect for Lex Friedman. I never watched his podcast until Kanye was on it, and I was really impressed. I started watching more afterwards. I was really impressed by not only like his ability to listen and sympathize, but just what he prefaces his podcast with at the very beginning. He asks you to take the most charitable interpretation of his guests, no matter how much you disagree with them. And I think that is like powerful. That is like acting out of love type of thing, or like at least trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess at the end of this, I would say pray for Kanye. Pray that he overcomes this and that
Finds the love.
finds
in
the
his
love.
heart.
And also, I hope people can, in general, who I think there's a lot of people that are lost, that are like angry for justifiable reasons, that are frustrated with the way things are in society for justifiable reasons, accurate reasons, but don't fall into the trap. Just don't fall into the trap of blaming a group of hatred. It's a trap of hatred, and that's not the way forward.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's.
I think that's a good message.